Hello everyone and welcome to the Fullerton National Showcase 2021. My name is Adriana Togia, but I'm known as Mrs. Audrey to our students, and we are so proud to welcome you to this year's National Showcase. Each year we have somewhat of a theme for the students, and this year it was you are capable of infinitely more than you believe, and our students really showcased what that means, especially in this completely unprecedented year. Our students were truly resilient in their performance, and we actually, after nationals, have at least one representative from each school that is in the top national performers in their event. And we have two national champions, two national schools of excellence, which is amazing. We have Parks Junior High, which is our two-time now national champion, and we also have Fissler Junior High that is joining that list, and we couldn't be more proud of our students. We have here today our top performers from our nationals team, and they'll give you a little taste of what they've been performing and practicing. So our first performer is going to be presenting an original oratory speech. That is a persuasive style speech that the student has written on a topic that they are passionate about. And our first performer, I couldn't be more proud, is a student I actually started with at Beechwood, and she is just truly has opened up and really found her confidence in speech, and I couldn't be more proud to introduce Noemi Maciel performing original oratory. Let's give her a round of applause.
An 80s sitcom revolving around your classic white family, the TV show Fuller House was a reboot of the beloved Full House. In season 1 of Fuller House, this bunch of lovable Caucasians decided to throw an Indian-themed party. It was bad. Bollywood dancing, traditional clothing, and of course, the sacred cow. And as if that wasn't awful enough, there were only white people at the party. Not so lovable anymore, Fuller House. Words like wrong and flavorless may be crossing your mind, but I have just the description this mess is looking for. Cultural appropriation, the dominant race taking advantage of traditions from another culture without valuing its meaning or origin. In this case, making money off of an Indian-themed gala. Happens all the time. Appropriation, not the gala. A 2018 YouGov study found that 47% of Americans don't think dressing up in cultural costumes is offensive. This proves that the majority of Americans find it perfectly fine to dress up in stereotypical Native American war bonnets or Mexican sombreros. This study is evidence to prove that cultural appropriation is common and happens frequently. However, it's often not recognized and labeled as honoring culture, when in fact, it's the opposite. So it's time we cancel cultural appropriation by finding out why it happens and how it affects us, before, finally, learning how to actually honor and appreciate different cultures. All cultures are beautiful and unique, and to be blunt, we don't deserve this. No one does. In 2013, Katy Perry released a music video for her hit song Dark Horse. The video was based entirely on ancient Egypt, and people were confused, and even looking at her lyrics. As of May 31st, 2017, Diversity Council points out Aphrodite was a Greek goddess. How did she end up in Egypt? Like many, Katy Perry clearly didn't do her research, but like many, she got away with it. Causes: white people look cool, and we don't know what cultural appropriation looks like. First, less recognition means cultural appropriation happens all the time. Vox of December 5th, 2019 details appropriation is taking something, moving it somewhere else, and then making money off of it. Appropriation can be hard to catch because we don't always know who created an idea or tradition. Mother Jones of October 11th, 2019 points to popular Spanish singer Rosalia's use of the dembow beat, a rhythm created by the Afro-Latinx community. Despite using this rhythm to win 5 Latin Grammys, fans just realized Rosalia is clueless of the rhythm's cultural background. Outside of music, something about white chef Rick Bayless's cookbook titled Authentic Mexican stands out to me. Take a guess. Rick didn't get called out until 2015, but by then, he'd already made $30 million. He stole customary Mexican cooking and got rich. If it was that easy, all of our parents should be rich too. Next, white people look cool while people of color are punished. People of color have always been shamed for unique parts of their identity, like hair and clothing. In some cases, even the law limits our identity. The 2020 Crown Collective reveals that women can legally get fired in 43 states because of their hair. African-American writer Jemiah Wilson recounts her struggles to the April 1st, 2016 New York Times. A professor told her she wouldn't make it in journalism with dreadlocks. But September 16th, 2016, People magazine reports designer Marc Jacobs put white models, like Kendall Jenner, into colorful dreadlocks for his high-end fashion show. In response to criticism, Jacobs brushed it off. So while African Americans are perceived as dirty, others are celebrated. It's not fair, but that's cultural appropriation in a nutshell. Not many remember Selena Gomez's themed MTV Movie Awards performance. Her entire show was India-inspired, from her bindi to the clothing. Even the Universal Society of Hinduism expressed disapproval. In response, Selena said, "The song almost has that Hindu feel, that tribal feel." Hindu feel? Tribal feel? I'm as confused as you are. Effects: cultural appropriation happens more often, and white superiority. First, less recognition means cultural appropriation happens more often. The Washington Post of October 21st, 2016 elaborates that cultural appropriation became a term in the 1980s. Obviously, people were appropriating long before that, but giving the behavior a name meant its effects were finally being acknowledged, right? Wrong. Instead, cultural appropriation is happening so often, we don't know what it looks like. The National Geographic of November 27th, 2017 points to Native American imagery on boxes of butter, or motorcycles, or beer, toys, and cigarettes. Even I didn't notice the woman on the Land O'Lakes butter logo, but I can assure you my family is not buying that butter again. Cultural appropriation has gone unnoticed for so long. Appropriation is only getting worse. Next, cultural appropriation establishes more white superiority. The 2018 Afropunk argues that cultural appropriation is a form of colonialism. Colonialism is when a country strips another of their culture and takes over. The Western world thinks it's the bee's knees and loved a hot cup of colonialism. ThoughtCo of June 18, 2020 explains that cultural appropriation happens because people of color were legally and socially considered as less human in the United States. It was easy to steal from them because no one considered their humanity or feelings. Even though the country has changed, when cultural appropriation happens, it still hurts the same. Stealing cultures has consequences, and ingrained white superiority is one of them. After seeing countless Dreamcatcher cutie costumes at a local Halloween shop, Native American student Gloria Ames decided to take action. She decided to educate other college students about the harmful and offensive ways that Native Americans are stereotyped. She hopes the awareness will put an end to the appropriation, but knows the problem may be bigger than her. Solutions? Let's learn and speak up. First, let's learn about different cultures. Turns out it's super easy. Apps like Google Arts and Culture and National Geographic give us free access to education on other cultures and traditions. You can explore the world right from your phone. For younger kids, children's books like Same, Same But Different and My Granny Went to the Market are fun ways to introduce your students or siblings to other cultures. Finally, ask questions. We're so lucky to be surrounded by so many different types of people. If we really want to connect, all we have to do is reach out. Next, we have to speak up. When we see someone appropriating, we have to tell them to stop. Standing up to someone is definitely easier said than done. But the first step is recognizing the appropriation. The 2015 Aorta Cooperative tells us to ask ourselves questions. Does the original source have a history of oppression? Are they being portrayed in a way that's demeaning or rude? Are they benefiting from someone else using their culture or ideas? After you've identified the appropriation, don't be afraid to confront the person. Otherwise, they may keep making the same mistake. So let them know. Hey, what you're doing is disrespectful and offensive. You probably didn't mean it this way. You're appropriating this culture, and it's really hurtful. Bam. With that conversation, we just solved cultural appropriation. Okay, maybe not all of it, but we're on our way. Now we know why cultural appropriation happens, its effects, and how we can change for the better. Cultural appropriation is hurtful and disrespectful. To be frank, don't appropriate culture. Check yourself and check your loved ones. Each and every culture is beautiful. Let's finally commit to being a part of the change.
Now, I thought that was truly incredible, and Noemi really demonstrated the persuasive skills that you need in original oratory to help advocate for change. Coming up next, we're going to have a declamation performance. And what students learn through declamation when they're giving these speeches is how to show their audience the passion in the original author. Declamation is a public speech that was once given that students take an excerpt of and perform. Now, to note, a goal in declamation is not to mimic the original author, but to show through their personality and their passion why the message was given in the first place. Coming up next, we're going to have a very special performer who has been with us since the 6th grade. This student has gone from really shy to eager and competitive and has shown their personality in every single event they compete in, which, funny enough, was 5 at this year's national competition. So Mia Sopti, go ahead and come on stage and give us that declamation speech. Let's give her a round of applause.
I was born on the last day of the last year of the 70s. I was raised on Free to Be You and Me, hip hop, and Anita Hill. My parents were radicals who became grown-ups, and my dad facetiously used to say, we wanted to save the world. I was raised with a very heavy sense of unfinished legacy, and I've been thinking a lot about what it means to grow up in this horrible, beautiful time. And I've decided that for me, it's been a real journey and paradox. The first paradox is that growing up is about rejecting the past and then promptly reclaiming it. Feminism was the water I grew up in. My mom started what is now the longest running women's film festival in the world. But she wasn't the only feminist in the house. My dad actually resigned for the male-only business club in our hometown, saying that he would never be part of an organization that would one day welcome his son, but not his daughter. G.D. Anderson once said, feminism isn't about making women strong. They already are strong. It's about changing the way the world perceives that strength. Now, this might come as a cliche, but it doesn't just apply to women around the world. It applies to every single person out there that's struggling to make their voice be heard. Race, class, gender, and ability might discriminate us, but they don't stop us. This isn't Her Mother's Feminism by Courtney E. Martin. In any case, I didn't really claim the feminist label, even though it was all around me. But I suspected there was something really important about this whole feminism thing. So I started covertly tiptoeing to mom's bookshelves, picking books out, and reading them. Never, of course, admitting I was doing so. I didn't actually claim the feminist label until I went to college. So my feminism is very indebted to my mom's, but it looks very different. My mom says patriarchy. I say intersectionality. So race, class, gender, and ability, all of these things go into our experiences of what it means to be a woman. Pay equity, yes, absolutely a feminist issue. But for me, so is immigration. My mom says protest march. I say online organizing. I co-edit on a site called Feminism.com. We're the most widely read feminist publication ever. And I tell you this because I think it's really important to see that there's a continuum. My mom says Gloria Steinman. I say Samhita Mukhopadhyay, Anne Fredman, Miriam Perez, Jessica Valentine, Vanessa Valentine, and on and on and on. We don't want one here, we don't want one icon, and we don't want one face. For thousands of women and men across the country doing online organizing, education, and changing institutions from the inside out, all continuing the incredible work that our mothers and grandmothers started. Which brings me to my second paradox. Sovereign about our smallness and maintaining faith in our greatness all at once. Many in my generation were socialized to believe that they were special little snowflakes who were going to go out and save the world. These are three words that many of us were raised with. Special little snowflakes. We walk across graduation stages, high on overblown expectations. And when we float back down to earth, we realize we actually don't know what it means to save the world anyway. The mainstream media often paints my generation as apathetic, and I think it's much more accurate to say that we're deeply overwhelmed. And there's a lot to be overwhelmed about, to be fair. An environmental crisis, wealth disparity in this country, unlike we've seen since 1928. And globally, a totally immoral and ongoing wealth disparity. Xenophobia is on the rise, the trafficking of women and girls. It's enough to make you feel really, really overwhelmed. And when I graduated from college in 2002, I was ready to make a difference. I went out, worked a nonprofit, protested, volunteered, and none of it seemed to matter. And on a particularly dark night of December of 2004, I sat down with my family and I told them that I'd become very disillusioned. I admitted that I actually had a fantasy, kind of dark fantasy, about writing a letter about everything that was wrong in the world and in lighting myself on fire on the White House steps. My mom looked right at me and she said, "I will not stand for your desperation. You're much stronger, more creative, and more resilient than that." Which brings me to my third paradox. Growing up is about aiming to succeed widely and being fulfilled by failing really well. There's a writer I'm deeply influenced by, Parker Palmer, and he writes that many of us are often whiplashed between arrogant overestimation of ourselves and servile underestimation of ourselves. Now, you may have guessed by now, I did not light myself on fire. I did what I know to do in desperation, which is write. I wrote the book that I needed to read. I wrote a book about 8 incredible people all over this country doing social justice work. I wrote about Llama Robinson, who's dedicating her life to environmental justice. I wrote about Marcela Guzman, who joined the military so she could afford college. She was actually sexually assaulted at boot camp and went on to co-organize Service Women's Action Network. And these activists that I interviewed had nothing in common, literally, except for one thing, which was that they all cited their mothers as their most looming and important activist influences. often, particularly at a young age, we look far afield for our models of the meaningful life. And sometimes their own kitchens, talking on the phone, making us dinner, and doing all the other things that keep the world going around and around. My mom and so many women like her have taught me that life is not about security or certainty even. It's about embracing the paradox. It's about acting in the face of overwhelm. And it's about loving people really, really well. And at the end of the day, these things make for a lifetime of challenge and reward. Thank you.
Thank you, Samya, for that powerful and passionate performance. I think my favorite thing about Samya in the Nationals preparation was every practice she would come and say, Mrs. Audrey, what event can I try next? And would just keep doing that until she accumulated those 5. Our next performer is just as eager and just as excited. I do have to brag a little bit. This performer actually has 2 national championships from this last year's competition, and we couldn't be more proud. We're gonna have the student perform their informative speech, which, similar to original oratory, was written by the student on a topic that they are passionate about talking more about. And our next performer is Molly Cooper, and Molly started in speech and debate at Richmond Elementary, came with that fire, and has continued to bring that passion. So Molly, whenever you're ready, go ahead and perform your informative speech for all of us.
Ever since I was 5 years old, my most vivid memories were barreling down Splash Mountain at Disney. And as I grew older, I began to be curious of what brought my favorite ride to the happiest place on earth. So naturally, like any talkative teenager, I decided to ask a Disney cast member, what movie is this based off of? And every time I would ask, there'd be this awkward stare and content laugh about how they didn't know. Upon further research, I found out that it was based off of Song of the South, the movie Disney swears to forget. NPR of June 26, 2020 explains that this film was blatantly racist. It mocked the way of the Black lives and reinforced problematic stereotypes. And I had been riding that ride for years without knowing how bad it was. But I'm sure you're not surprised. It wasn't the first or the last time Disney has made a racist mistake. From films such as Fantasia, Dumbo, Peter Pan, and many more, Disney tries to make us forget about their racist past. In Peter Pan, as Entertainment Tonight, December 4, 2014 explains how the Disney animators made the Native Americans' faces bright red so their differences were highlighted. Market Watch, June 20th, 2020 explains that it's not just the movies that are racist. It's the founders, the books, the songs, and yes, even the happiest place on earth. Disney has made one thing clear. We will not change our racist actions until the last possible minute. Because for them, those problematic choices leads to bigger paychecks and less controversy. Now, to be clear, Disney has done some good as to not offer Song of the South on Splash Mountain and to cut the crow scene from Dumbo. But they still have a long way to go considering that Disney Plus has over 50 million users and that 50 million people visit Disney World each year. So we must talk about the background, impacts, and implications of Disney's racist past because one small change does not equal an apology. Now, Walt Disney is known as the creator of Mickey Mouse and the Disney franchise. Many kids look up to Walt as an inspiration, but they don't know that he's been letting racism fly under the radar for decades. First, let's analyze the background of Disney's racist past. Initially, Walt Disney has a history of problematic behavior. For theme parks were a thing, good old Walt's been out there making movies about things he should not have been talking about. Vulture, Lost Success, July 1st, 2020, explains that aside from being anti-Semitic and sexist, Walt Disney was racist. Most notably with films such as Song of the South, Dumbo, and even Snow White. Specifically with Song of the South. The NAACP reached out to Disney to make changes, and he obliged. But when the film was re-released, those changes were nowhere in sight. So it's clear Disney showed blatant disregard for people of color, and it's not surprising that these same racist ideas were implied in the creation of the park. And it took over 80 years for these actions to be called out. Next, racism is still alive well within Disney movies. Movies like Fantasia, released in November 1940. Cinema Craze of July 28, 2017 reveals that the main character is described as a servant and is seen polishing the adult center's left hoof. Now, Disney's attempt to forget about this was cunninger from the movie without addressing the issue, and it does not just stop with the movies. The aforementioned Vulture exposes that since the inception of Disneyland, there was this unwillingness to hire minority workers. This same bias still applies to those who work there today. Oftentimes, minority workers are given the glamorous Disney cast member roles we all know and love, proving that the happiest place on earth is only happy if you look the part. Aside from blatant race descriptions, many Disney films have hidden racist aspects that often go underlooked until called out. In Aladdin, many of the songs contain problematic references in regards to life in the Mideast. Let's expose these acts by unpacking the impacts of racism in Disney. Initially, kids are being introduced to racism at an early age because of Disney+, while other services like Hulu, Netflix, Prime, and YouTube are making region content even easier. Knowingly or not, kids have access to racist Disney past at their fingertips. Yet another Disney film kids watch all the time is Dumbo. Yes, the flying elephant we all know and love. The aforementioned Entertainment Tonight exposes how the Black Crows speak and sing in a stereotypical Black Southern vernacular. While Disney Plus cut the scene from Dumbo, many kids can still access it. Plus, Vox, June 22nd, 2020 concludes that despite Disney removing their outwardly racist content, many Disney shows, films, and attractions are full of microaggressions. Next, Disney still profits off of microaggression behavior. They take advantage of the situation and don't remove their racist content, rides, and attractions until they are called out. Biz Journals of November 8th, 2019 outlines that Disney is making boatloads of money each year. And no, it's not from the overpriced Mickey ears or waffle cones. In 2019, Disneyland made $24.7 billion. And in 2020, that number rose to $26.2 billion. That's $1.5 billion more than 2019, even with the COVID-19 shutdown. Yet, these parks still have a racist splash mound operating, and it has been operating without change until Disney was risked of losing money. In The Little Mermaid, there is a black fish who is described in a way that resembles historical racist imagery in Under the Sea. Even worse, Ariel refers to some of the slower or non-white mermaids as Crowy, a racist term used towards that community. Finally, let's analyze the implications of Disney's racist past. Initially, Disney exposes that we're quick to assume anything labeled as family is automatically unproblematic. Rides like the Teacups and movies like Princess and the Frog blind us from the racist actions that are Song of the South and Splash Mountain. The Washington Post of June 11, 2020 addresses that we have failed at calling out our own family members for their racist themes. So it would make sense that we would do the same for companies that are part of the family. Disney is known for its PG rating and family-friendly park experience. And we have failed to see them as anything but. Finally, Disney showcases people to stop their racist behavior. In our political climate, people will apologize for what they have done, not because they are sorry or because they have learned, but rather to keep their career. Why, you see, it saves their lives rather than supporting others. And people on social media are finally forcing Disney to take action. The aforementioned Washington Post exposes that Disney fans are urging theme park operators to rethink Splash Mountain for their racist themes. But Splash Mountain has been a thing since 1989, and it took until 2020 for Disney to admit they were wrong. Disney is only taking action to their racist past because they are scared of what will happen if they don't. Now, Splash Mountain may look like a fun way to cool yourself on a hot day at Disney, but the reality of many Disney parks, shows, and attractions are not as kid-friendly as Disney says they are. And after analyzing the background, impacts, and implications of Disney's racist past, we start to realize that the world isn't all zippity-doo-dah as Disney says it is. And I would not plan on a trip to Disney anytime soon.
It always warms my heart to see Molly perform. Something to point out with her giving that informative speech right now was the writing did not stop. Molly was actually challenged to rewrite as the world changed, which really challenged her to keep up to date. Another event coming up right now is going to be impromptu speaking, which also has its unique challenges. Impromptu encourages students to be on top of current events by picking a topic, then brainstorming, outlining, all in 2 minutes before delivering a 5-minute speech. This next person that's gonna come up right now is a sixth grader, who joined us from Fissler as well, and she has just wowed every single person who has met her. She does her own research, comes ready and prepared, and is always just a joy to work with. And actually was a national champion at this year's NSDA in prepared prompt speaking. Coming up next, we have Reva Sopti.
I love Mr. Beast. In my opinion, he is the greatest YouTuber. I mean, he can entertain us while making money, which he donates to people in need. And while donating to people in need, he is creating more entertaining content for us to view. Man, this guy does it all. But even more importantly, Mr. Beast values helping others over being rich, which is a value that will always stay with him. Which reminds me of the quotation I received today. The beautiful thing about learning is that no one can take it away from you, by B.B. King, which I can interpret to mean that moral values outweigh materialism. Moral values are like learning, because both are something that cannot be taken away from us, the way physical possessions can. And we can see this through 3 examples. First, we will take a look at someone who lost it all and now has more than ever. Second, how greed controlled this person. And lastly, a man who stayed true to his values. So first, let's take a look at someone who you can count on when you're in need for some wisdom. Jay Shetty is a purpose coach. He graduated out of college with a first-class degree in business. But he didn't really think business was for him. While he could have chosen the easy path of a stable job and a high income, he decided to forego physical possessions by becoming a monk to find his true calling in life, which he found out is to help other people find their purpose. Now, he is so successful that he has helped big celebrities like Kobe Bryant and Alicia Keys, as well as the working class. Jay Shetty shows us that money isn't everything, and that true success can only be reached when we hold our moral values high. Second, we will take a look at one of the greatest scams in history. Bernie Madoff executed the world's largest Ponzi scheme in history. He managed to scam tens of billions of dollars out of people over the course of 17 plus years. He would go up to an investor claiming that he could invest their money in hopes of 10% profits. Then he would go up to another investor making the same claims. And with the newly acquired money from each investor, he would have paid previous investors that he had already scammed. Eventually, his greed for money caught up with him, and he was sentenced to prison for 150 years, proving that materialism has severe consequences. And lastly, we will take a look at a do-gooder. Warren Buffett, the owner of Berkshire Hathaway, is one of the world's largest philanthropists. He found himself with billions of dollars that he didn't need, so he decided to give it to people who did. This wealthy, yet relatively simple man, with a $20 flip phone and McDonald's for breakfast every day, pledged to donate 99% of his fortune to charity. And since 2006, he has donated over $37 billion. Even though he is the 6th richest man in the world, he is as humble as ever and doesn't let temporary things like money control him. Which reminds me of the quotation I received today, because Buffett, like B.B. King, understands the value of virtues, which cannot be taken away from us. So after taking a look at these 3 examples of Jay Shetty, Bernie Madoff, and Warren Buffett, we can see why moral values are crucial and so much more important than materialism. Now, I don't know about you, but once I'm done here, I'm gonna go watch the Mr. Beast and admire the dude's moral values.
Wow. Reva is a part of our Fissler team and was a part of making that national championship a reality here this year for Fissler. And I can't wait to see what Reva does in her 8th grade year. So our next performer is going to be performing a storytelling, which is probably the most straightforward event in speech and debate. Performers take a storybook that they might have read as a child, have to perform it out with voices, creating scenery around them, and really bringing that story off the page and into a performance. And I couldn't think of a better student to show you an example of this performance. Our next performer is Amy Rivera, and Amy got her start in speech at Sunset Lane in 5th grade, and this is actually her 2nd time at nationals. And I cannot wait for you to see, because Amy has by far made me laugh and cry laughing and ugly cry laugh in all of our coaching sessions. So please enjoy our next performer, Amy Rivera, performing storytelling.
On Friday, Llama will destroy the world.
Monday. On Monday, Llama found piles of cake.
More cake than any llama should ever eat. Llama ate all the cake. So much cake that this was his first mistake. Now, it was an honest mistake. It was a delicious mistake. It was a mistake that would lead into more mistakes that would eventually lead to the end of the world. In this story, we meet Llama, who lives his simple week having a simple life. But soon we'll learn how insignificant things that we do could lead to the end of the world. Or in other words, the Llamageddon. Llama Destroys the World by Jonathan Stutzman. Tuesdays were for dancing, so Llama got his dancing pants. But Llama's pants could not fit. He had too much cake in him. But Llama wouldn't dance without his dancing pants. So Llama huffed, and he puffed, and he shimmied himself into those pants. This was Llama's second mistake. Llama danced. He shimmied. He tangoed real smooth. His dance moves were on point, and so was his clothes. But his pants did not stand a chance. Rip! The rip was thunderous. It shook the houses and the mountains. It even ripped off my mask. At this point, the rip was so crazy that it made a black hole. On Wednesday, when Llama was walking around, he found a black hole. Llama? Now, Llama had never seen the black hole before. He didn't know what it was or what it could do. But Llama was a llama of science. He knew their answers and they were waiting to be discovered. Llama read. He did experiments. He finally came up with a logical and scientific explanation. Llama, he said very scientifically. Now, instead of telling the whole world about its inevitable doom, Llama decided to do something more important. Make a bologna and cheese sandwich with extra cheese. This was Llama's third mistake. Thursday. On Thursday, you could look at the sky and see inevitable doom. But Llama didn't notice. Thursdays were for painting, and Llama was painting his masterpiece. The end was near. Friday. On Friday, the world ended. The more that the black hole sucked in, the bigger and stronger it got. It sucked in houses, mountains, yes, even Llama. I am Llama! It even sucked in the galaxies. Until there was nothing left. It was just an empty abyss. Saturday. On Saturday, everything was back to normal. Everything that the black hole sucked in was spit back out by it. Exactly how it was. Yes, even Llama. I am Llama! Oh my, Llama, Llama. The sky was blue and the sun was shining like nothing had ever happened. Sunday. After the world was back to normal, Llama did do something, well, normal. Find piles of pie. More pie than any llama should ever eat. And Llama!
I always have to take a breath after watching her perform. I didn't know that you could choke laughing just because no air is coming out of you from how hard you were laughing before just seeing storytelling and HR performers like Amy just go up and make you stop breathing for just a second to get that last laugh out. Now, our next performer is going to do a declamation speech. And as we talked about before, declamation is not meant to mimic the original speaker. It's meant to show the students' personalities. In addition to that, it challenges students to go back and see what were the social and political issues at the time and really deeply dive on what those implications are today. Coming up next, we have our very amazing performer, Ashna Dialani. And she truly has been an incredible performer at showing us what it takes to be a national performer. Last year, she was a dramatic interp champion, and this year she is a declamation champion. And she's actually going to be showing us her performance right now.
So for the first time in America's modern history, we have 5 generations interacting with each other at work. The veterans, born between 1922 and 1943, are known as the greatest generation. The matures, the silents. They are known for the self-sacrifice, respect for authority, and work as its own reward. The boomers came shortly after, born between 1944 and 1960. This is a generation characterized by hard work. In fact, we can thank this generation for the term workaholic. They appreciate competition, they love effective communication, and they are thinking towards retirement if they, haven't retired already. Generation X is known as the lost generation, the latchkey generation, born between 1961 and 1980. This is the smallest generation sandwiched between the boomers and the big millennials. More parents were divorced in this generation than any other generation prior. They were also the first ones to teach us about work-life balance and the first to really ask for that in the workplace. And then, millennials. The everybody gets a ribbon generation, born between 1981 and 2000. Never knew a time where technology wasn't present in the home. They are incredibly pragmatic. They're hopeful, and they're determined. They think they're going to change the world. In fact, I think that they're actually going to do it. American novelist Gertrude Stein once said, "Each generation has something different at which we are all looking." Stein was noted for being an American living in Paris during the 1900s. She would host renowned artists such as Pablo Picasso, Ernest Hemingway, and F. Scott Fitzgerald in her Parisian home. And despite their generational age difference, Stein acknowledged that we must look towards each other's point of view in order to create a better understanding of our world. And this speech highlights that sentiment. Each generation brings something different, which can help other generations to come. We must remember, we can learn through others. How Generational Stereotypes Hold Us Back at Work by Leah Georges. They might be a little bit idealistic sometimes, but in just the past several years, we have seen millennials overtake Generation X to be the most represented generation in the workforce. In fact, more than 1 in 3 people in the United States labor force is a millennial. And soon to join us there, Generation Z, born since 2000. Our high school interns, or soon to be high school graduates, Now, if you open up any internet browser, look at Amazon, you might assume that there is a literal war in the workplace. We see blog topics like 17 reasons why millennials are the worst generation, or why baby boomers have ruined it for everybody. It's like turning into this West Side Story. Boomers come in one door, millennials come in another, the lobby. They just fight with each other all day. Go home, come back to work, do the same. Well, what if I told you that these generations may not exist? I have been spending some time thinking about this and researching this. And fellow researchers and I aren't exactly sure that these generations are real, or if we can even agree that these groups even exist. We certainly don't agree on who belongs in them, and they span something like 20 years. So at whatever point in time, a 1-year-old and a 20-year-old are said to have the same values, to want the same things at work, to have the same stereotypes working for and against them. And in fact, different areas of the world define these generations differently. So we can't even compare generations across various areas of the world. So this is what I've learned talking to organizations that employ a wide range of people of various ages. We are so much more similar than we are different. People want work that matters. They want flexibility. They want support. They want appreciation. They want better coffee. But none of these things are tied into a generation. We know that 80-year-olds and 20-year-olds go home and do different things. They have different values, at least when it comes to things happening outside of work. But I think what's happened is that this focus on generational cohorts, these groups of people, has created a space where we have forgotten that people are people. And to know who they really are, who we really work with, we need to figure out how to better navigate this multi-generational workplace than ball pits. What if we radically, simply, not easily, meet people where they are, individualize our approach? See, I have never met a generation. I've had a lot of conversations with people who happen to identify with a specific generational cohort. I know 80-year-olds who text message and 23-year-olds who crochet blankets, but none of these things are stereotypical of that generation, right? Nilofer Merchant, she's a thought leader in innovation. She tells us we have to meet people in their onlyness. That spot in the world where only they stand as a function of our unique history, our experiences, and our hopes. When we meet people in their onlyness, that spot in the world where only they stand, we're not talking about generation anymore. And so here's my challenge to us. Pick a person, just one, and explore their onlyness. And in the moments where it's appropriate, teach. And then learn. And figure out what they can bring to work that no one else can bring to work. Because that is what makes work richer. And then do it again. And then do it again. And so I think there is just no need to argue about which generation is the most angry, the most entitled, or the most obsessed with food. Maybe let's just all do our best to humbly meet people where they are, how they show up that day, generation and all.
You know, us coaches, we always love when students are like 6th or 7th grade, because that means we get them for just another year and we get to have them on our team again. So Ashna, we are so excited to see what you do next year as an 8th grader at Parks. Our last performer is going to be performing a prose interpretation, and this one is brand new to you all in the audience. Prose is about storytelling in that it connects us with memories and how to share experiences and connect us through that. And so our next performer is an incredible actress, and I cannot wait for you all to watch. Maria Lorraine Mercurio actually joined speech this year, completely virtually for the first time, and not only stuck it out, but qualified for the national team and won a national championship in prose interpretation. Get your tissues ready. I'm just warning you now. Our next performer is Lorraine Mercurio.
What I always wanted as a little girl was to be a performer / stewardess. I grew up in my mama's beauty shop in Texas with big mirrors and swivel chairs. You know, I would wait until the ladies were held captive under the dryers and give mandatory performances. When I wasn't doing my shows for the ladies, I would play stewardess, and I would push this little manicure cart around the beauty shop. Miss Helen, Miss Melba, would y'all like a magazine? And the ladies would say, oh, baby, you just give great customer service, don't you? Well, about 10 years ago, I was living in New York, and I really needed a job. I then met this lovely girl who had 9 words that changed my life forever. Have you ever thought about being a flight attendant? Has anyone ever felt judged by someone they didn't know? Well, in this story, Faye learns that it takes more than just an assumption to really know someone. Fireworks from Above by Faye Lane. I knew I was in the right place. In flight attendant school, they told us, each and every one of you is here for a reason, and that reason is your ability to smile and be kind. We can teach you how to evacuate an airplane, but we cannot teach you how to smile and be kind. Your mother did that. Please thank her for me. It was so beautiful, and I could not wait to get out there on the line to surprise people with my kindness and in process of moving people from point A to point B. No, like actually move people. After I graduated, I started the job, and I had this epiphany almost right away that this job is hard and people are horrible. It was mainly because I was taking garbage from everyone all day and saying thank you for it. Thank you. Thank you for garbage. Thank you. One day, a passenger had a heart attack on my flight. He was lying in the aisle. We had opened his shirt. He had pads of defibrillator on him. I was holding an oxygen bottle, and then this woman in the row sitting next to me, you know, she kept tugging on my blouse. Excuse me, just a minute, please. And I was like, wait a minute. Maybe she has an emergency, or maybe she knows something. What is it? Then she held up her coffee cup and said, this coffee, it's cold. I learned that people can be cold. In late September of 2001, I was working a flight, and a passenger came on with a garbage bag. Again, with all the garbage, he goes to where he's seated, he opens overhead bin, puts the garbage bag in, and my next thought was, you know,
what is in that garbage bag? Because in late September of 2001, you know, we were all still a little edgy and paranoid, so I was kind of keeping an eye on him in the bag. He goes to where he was seated, he opens a red bin, puts the garbage bag in, and stood there with his hands on it, guarding it. It was kind of awkward because, you know, he was just standing there, so I decided to ask, "Are you traveling for business or pleasure?" And he said, "Oh, neither. I live in California, but I came to New York because my son, you know, he was a first responder at Ground Zero, and he died there. I came to pick up his uniform, which is all I have left of him, and it's in this bag, this trash bag." And I remembered why I was there and why I was hired and why I wanted this job. Because I remembered that everybody has a story, and I don't know what that story is. People fly for a reason. Maybe it's to go to a funeral or to see someone who's sick, or maybe it's something joyful like a wedding. You know, I don't know their story, but for that little piece of time, I'm part of it, and I have an impact on their experience. I have seen horrible things from the air, but I've also seen a lot of amazing, beautiful things like the Grand Canyon, the Northern Lights, and fireworks from above. And now, when I go through the cabin with my garbage bag, saying thank you and smiling, I mean it. Thank you. Thank you. Because this job enables me to be part of something bigger than me and to be connected to other people. So, thank you.
Wow. Well, that is our last performer, and I just want to say, you know, these students are really a shining example of what Fullerton School District is capable of. And we couldn't do this without the support of the Fullerton community, all of our students' parents, our teacher coaches who are there with the students day to day, making sure they made it on time to tournaments. We want to thank the school board for supporting this program, Dr. Pletka for also being a huge supporter, Dr. Julian Lee for being there, and Dr. Janelle Lau for always coming to support and see the students and be here for them. You know, Mr. Tinajero started this program at Fullerton High School. I'm actually one of his students, and we had a conversation today at our summer camp about how none of us would be here without that one person that chose to pass on that legacy and that passion. And you all know Miss Finney here in the Fullerton district, and she has helped to bring that here in the last 3 years in Fullerton. So I, Mrs. Audrey, just want to thank you all for knowing that our students have the ability, because Fullerton is leaving a legacy, and we are letting the nation know that this is what our national champions look like, and I cannot wait to see what we do next year. Thank you for joining us.